My fiancée voicemailed an hour before the wedding. My ex called, I am having second thoughts. I replied, as you wish. Then I walked to the altar, played the voicemail aloud, and toasted to my newfound freedom. Her phone started blowing up my voicemail with panicked cries to please stop. I, 32 male, am sitting in the empty ballroom of what was supposed to be my wedding reception. The string quartet packed up an hour ago. The caterers are boxing up filet mignon that will probably go to a shelter tomorrow. And I'm on my third glass of the very expensive champagne my ex-fiancée Clara, 30, insisted we needed. 3 hours ago, I was in the groom's suite, adjusting my tie. My hands were slick with sweat, and I was feeling that specific blend of sheer terror and giddy excitement everyone talks about. My phone buzzed on the vanity. A notification lit up the screen. Voicemail from Clara. Not a text, a voicemail. An hour before the wedding. My stomach plummeted. You don't leave a voicemail an hour before the ceremony unless someone is dead or dying. My best man, Ben, saw my face drain of color and asked what was wrong. I couldn't speak. I just fumbled with the phone, my fingers feeling thick and clumsy, and put it on speaker. Her voice was weirdly distant, rehearsed. Leo. Hey, something's come up. Julian called me. Julian, her ex, the one she'd sworn for 5 years, was a toxic but closed chapter. He said he made a mistake, that he still loves me, and I'm having second thoughts. I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I'm at my mom's. The voicemail ended, a tinny final click. The silence that followed was deafening. Ben swore under his breath and started pacing, talking about calling the venue manager, stopping the guests, but I couldn't move. For a solid minute, all I could feel was a high-pitched ringing in my ears. The world went narrow, like looking through a tunnel. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't even rage. It was a violent physical shock, the kind that makes you feel cold all over. Then, through the fog, something else surfaced. A cold, hard clarity. The switch didn't just flip, it shattered. All the little weirdnesses of the last few months, the secretive phone calls she'd taken in the other room, her sudden girls' nights, that were always vague on details, the way she'd seemed distant. It wasn't just wedding stress. It was a parallel life I hadn't seen. The puzzle piece didn't just click into place. It exposed the fact that I had been working on a completely different puzzle all along. I looked at Ben, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. Tell my parents what happened, but don't tell anyone else. The wedding is still on. He stopped pacing and stared at me, his mouth half open. Leo, are you okay? What are you talking about? I'm fine, I lied. I wasn't fine. I was a man standing on a trapdoor she had just opened. My only choice was whether to fall quietly or to make a goddamn noise on the way down. I chose noise. I texted Clara a simple reply, as you wish. Then I turned my phone off. I walked out to that beautifully decorated altar. 200 guests were smiling at me. Her parents, David and Mariah, were beaming in the front row. For a second, looking at their proud faces, a wave of nausea hit me. I could just call it off, announce a family emergency, let them save face. But that would mean I would carry the quiet shame, the questions, the whispers. It would be my burden. Theirs would be hidden. No, absolutely not. I got to the officiant, shook his hand, and took the microphone. My own hand was shaking, so I gripped the stand. Thank you all for coming, I started, my voice tight but even. I have a brief announcement. Unfortunately, Clara will not be joining us today. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Her mother, Mariah, started to stand up, a look of performative confusion on her face. I held up a hand. She was kind enough to let me know her decision an hour ago, I continued, making eye contact with David. In fact, I think it's best you hear it in her own words, so there is no confusion, no whispers. I held my phone to the mic and played the voicemail. The silence in that room became a physical presence. It was heavy, absolute. I watched Mariah's face cycle through confusion, to crimson rage, and finally to a stark, horrified white. David looked like he'd been slapped. I saw my own mother's face, her hand covering her mouth in shock. Across the aisle, I saw my great-aunt Carol staring at me with wide, disapproving eyes, as if I had committed the greater social sin. Maybe in her world, I had. After the voicemail finished, I put my phone away. I raised my glass. I'd asked the catering staff for one before I walked out. So to unexpected developments, I said, my voice finally steady, and to my newfound freedom. I took a long, slow sip of champagne. The bar is open, the food is paid for, Please, enjoy the party. Celebrate with me. I walked off the altar and straight to the bar. My phone, which I'd turned back on, started vibrating incessantly. Voicemail after voicemail from Clara. I could see the screen light up with the notifications. Please stop. Leo, what are you doing? Call me now. You're ruining my life. My life? An interesting perspective. Most of my friends and family are here. Ben and my dad clapped me on the back, their faces grim but supportive. My mom just hugged me tight. Her side of the aisle emptied out in about 5 minutes flat, a silent, hurried retreat, led by her furious-looking parents. So here I am, drinking champagne and trying to ignore the tremor in my hands. Ada, for how I handled this, I honestly don't know. But for the first time in months, the air doesn't feel thick with unspoken lies. Update 1. Hey everyone. The support on my original post has been a lifeline. Reading your comments has helped me feel less like a man who went crazy and more like a man who was pushed to his absolute limit. Things have escalated. The night of the wedding was a surreal blur. My people rallied, but it was a strange celebration, heavy with what-ifs. Her family's exit was followed by a barrage of vitriol. I had 47 missed calls and 22 voicemails from Clara and another dozen from her mother Mariah. I didn't listen to them. I just saved them to a folder. Evidence. The real fun started the next day. I was at my parents' house, fielding calls and trying to piece together the logistics of unwinding a life when David, Clara's father, showed up. Unannounced. My dad, a man who values privacy above all, met him at the door. I could hear their voices, low and tense. David wasn't yelling. He uses this controlled corporate shark tone, the kind that's all smiling teeth and veiled threats. He said I had publicly and maliciously humiliated his daughter and their family. He said I had no right to use her private message against her. Then he had the gall to say that I owed them. Here's the financial breakdown you guys asked about. My family and I paid for the venue, the catering, the band, and the open bar. It was a significant sum, around $40,000, all from my savings and a generous gift from my parents. Clara's parents, David and Mariah, paid for her dress, the flowers, and a photographer. Maybe $8,000 total. David, standing on my parents' porch, told my father that since I was the one who chose to turn a private matter into a public circus, I was morally and financially responsible for their losses. He wanted reimbursement for the dress, flowers, and photographer. My dad just stared at him for a long beat and said, "David, the only thing you should be doing right now is leaving." An hour later, an email from David landed in my inbox. It was a professionally worded demand for $8,250, itemized with scanned receipts. He wrote, "This is a small price to pay for the emotional distress and public defamation you have caused. Consider this a gesture of goodwill that will prevent us from exploring more formal legal avenues." The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. They weren't sorry. They weren't ashamed. They were furious that their daughter's escape plan was messy. They were mad that they looked bad. Later that evening, Clara called from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but I knew I had to. The conversation was chilling. There was no apology, just pure, shrieking rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she screamed. My parents' friends were there. My cousins. Everyone heard that. "Julian won't even talk to me now because he says this is too much drama." That was the part that stuck with me. Julian, the great romantic love she was torpedoing our lives for, was already backing away from the wreckage he helped create. "You could have just told everyone I was sick, Leo," she cried. "We could have handled this privately. You had to make it a spectacle. You had to be the victim." I let her burn herself out. When she was just breathing heavily into the phone, I finally spoke. "You made your choice, Clara. An hour before the wedding. I made mine. You don't get to control the consequences of your own actions. Send your father my regards, and tell him my lawyer will be in touch." I hung up. The smear campaign started yesterday. Vague posts from her cousins about toxic men. Then a long, detailed post from her maid of honor about how I had a terrifying public moan, that Clara had been unhappy for months, and that she is a survivor of emotional abuse. They were trying to rewrite history in real time. To paint me as the unstable villain and her as the brave victim who fled for her safety. They think this is a game of social media. They don't understand that they just handed me the ammunition I needed. Update 2. Things have moved from a war of words to a strategic legal battle. The online smear campaign was their biggest mistake. It took this from a personal betrayal to a public attack on my character and reputation. That's a line they don't get to cross. As many of you advised, my first step was hiring a lawyer. My uncle recommended a woman named Miss Albright. And bulldog is an understatement. I walked into her office with a folder containing David's emailed demand, Clara's voicemails, and 15 different screenshots of the social media posts. She listened to the whole story, her face unreadable. When I was done, she took off her glasses and said, "They're arrogant and sloppy. That makes them predictable. The defamation is the key. Suing for wedding costs is messy and varies by state. But libel? That's a different animal, especially when they've made specific false claims about abuse." Here's the plan we put into motion. Step 1. The legal counteroffensive. Miss Albright drafted 2 things. First was a response to David's email. It politely declined his offer to accept $8,250. It then laid out in excruciating detail how Clara's actions constituted a breach of contract that resulted in direct, non-refundable losses of over $40,000 to my family. The second and more important document was a cease and desist letter. It was sent to David, Mariah, Clara, the maid of honor, and the cousin. It explicitly listed their defamatory statements and demanded the immediate removal of all related posts. It also stated our intent to file a defamation lawsuit seeking damages if they did not comply within 48 hours. The letter mentioned that in the discovery phase of such a lawsuit, we would be subpoenaing phone records for both Clara and Julian to establish a timeline of the affair, proving their claims of her leaving for safety were maliciously false. Step 2. The pushback. The reaction was immediate. The social media posts vanished within a day. But David, true to his shark nature, didn't just fold. Ms. Albright got a call from his lawyer. They blustered. They threatened a countersuit for my public spectacle. They argued the social media posts were matters of opinion. Miss Albright held firm, apparently telling them, calling someone an abuser isn't an opinion, it's a factual claim, and your clients made it in writing. We are very eager to proceed to discovery. The threat of dragging Julian and his life into a legal deposition was the real checkmate. They were trying to protect Clara's narrative, but a lawsuit would expose the entire sordid backstory. Step 3. A personal matter. While the lawyers talked, I did something for myself. The name Julian had been tormenting me. I did some basic social media searching. It wasn't hard. A mutual acquaintance, cornered and ashamed, confirmed the story. It wasn't a one-time call. Clara had been seeing Julian for at least 3 months. She was having an affair. And Julian was married. I found his wife's professional profile online. A pediatrician. Photos of her with their 2 young kids. A wave of something cold and ugly washed over me. This woman's life was also built on a lie. She deserved the truth. I felt a pang of guilt thinking about their kids, collateral damage in a war they knew nothing about. But the truth is the truth. Her husband and my ex-fiancée made this happen, not me. I created a throwaway email account. The message was short and sterile. I am the man your husband's mistress was supposed to marry last Saturday. I believe you have a right to know about his ongoing activities. Here is a voicemail she left me on our wedding day, mentioning his name. I attached the audio file. No commentary, just information. For the first time since this started, I felt like I wasn't just reacting. I was taking a piece of the power back. They wanted to play dirty in the dark. I just turned on the lights. Final update. It's over. Well, my part in it is. The legal battle ended not with a bang, but with a series of weary, calculated negotiations between lawyers. David's blustering folded when he realized we weren't backing down from the defamation suit. They were terrified of discovery. The final agreement was this. They would sign a non-disparagement agreement, legally binding them and Clara from ever speaking or writing about me publicly. In return, we would not pursue the defamation case. There was no grand apology. And they didn't just write me a check. That would have been too simple. Instead, in a final face-saving gesture for them, they agreed to directly pay the outstanding $15,000 balance we still owed the wedding venue, the largest single non-refundable cost. It wasn't paying me back. It was settling a contractual obligation. A corporate solution to a personal mess. The money never touched my hands, but the debt was cleared. It was a quiet, anticlimactic victory, but a victory nonetheless. As for the rest of the fallout, real life is messier than a storybook. Julian's wife, the pediatrician, apparently acted with surgical precision. Our mutual acquaintance told Ben that she filed for divorce the week after she got the email. Julian is reportedly a wreck, having lost his family and facing a very expensive legal battle of his own. I do feel a knot in my stomach when I think of their kids. It's a heavy feeling, knowing I played a role in that upheaval. But I stand by it. She deserved to know who she was married to. Clara's fate is less clear-cut. Ben ran into her cousin at a store, and the cousin just looked exhausted. She said things are really bad. Clara is apparently bouncing between friends' couches. Her parents are furious with her, not for the betrayal, but for the humiliation and the cost. She's isolated, but she's not a tragic heroine. She's just a person sitting in the rubble of a house she blew up herself. There's no satisfaction in knowing the details, just a grim confirmation that actions have consequences. And me? I'm not fixed. I'm not magically healed. There are days I wake up and the anger is still there, a hot coal in my chest. There are nights I lie awake and the humiliation washes over me again. The trust I had in my own judgment is shattered, and I know that will take a long time to rebuild. The $15,000 they covered freed up the last of my savings. The solo trip I booked isn't a victory lap. It's a retreat, a chance to go somewhere I don't have to see pity in anyone's eyes, where I'm just a stranger with a backpack. The toast I made to newfound freedom was a bitter, impulsive line. But I'm starting to understand it. I'm free from the lies, from the weight of her secrets. It's a harsh, lonely kind of freedom, but it's real, and it's a start. Thank you all again for being a sounding board in the craziest, most clarifying chapter of my life. Time to go pack.